Welcome to another episode of Stewart Squared. Today we're going to be streaming because streaming is actually something you were involved in. We can go back into that story as well about how all the infrastructure was built to allow us to do what we're now doing as we are live on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Welcome to another episode. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Maybe you want to tell our live viewers what this is all about.
Riverside, been using Riverside to
Stewart Squared. You were listening to Stewart Squared.
Good call. Yeah.
Stewart, me, and Stewart III, the younger, my son, and this is an exercise in the young people, and he's not as young anymore as he used to be, nor am I. But the young people interrogating the olds about how computer stuff works, computer industry stuff works, and what are the patterns that I've learned from my history in the PC industry and the computer industry at large, and how do they apply to artificial intelligence?
Yes, and that AI piece is a big piece because we are in the middle of $500 billion being invested in data centers in this year alone. And we have made the comparison to what things you've taught me about dark fiber in 2001. We actually had Fred Vogelstein on the show last week in a really fun episode where we geeked out on that topic exactly. And there's so much to talk about. And this is the cool thing, is that it feels like for the past 10 years, starting with that streaming, starting when you were involved with Twitch and the social media and the Facebook and all that stuff, it kind of got a little crazy there. Whereas before it was not so crazy. There was not this sort of sense that technology was invading our lives, which is now like very much the what's happening. And so with that sort of, it got very dystopian for the past 15 years. And now it is getting utopian and dystopian at the same time, with a whole bunch of different nuances in that. But AI, for me at least, is an incredibly utopian technology because I'm now building software. I'm now experiencing zero blocks. When I go, I have an idea, I build it, and it works, which is making me more amenable to thinking that AGI is closer than we think. Which I don't think we talk about.
I'm thinking it's further away.
Yeah, go into it.
I've been doing a deep dive on the media industry, media and entertainment issue. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to the Screen Time conference in Los Angeles, and now I'm attending the New Yorker Festival in New York City. And all these people can talk about, and there is no disagreement at all. It is completely dystopian. Like, we're all going to lose our jobs. The film and TV industry is going to change radically, and we don't know how. So there's nothing positive about AI, and this is a completely firmly held belief. Or the few people like me that know better aren't speaking up to try to change their minds. Because when you're sitting in a crowd of 1,000 people and 999 of them think that this is the end of the world, you kind of sneak out of the room and hold your counsel. And that's what's most amazing to me, is the degree to which it has gotten dystopian. And I watched a panel yesterday, was adjusting to the digital age, something like that. And it was three writers with an editor, so it was all New Yorker, and three writers, and they're sensible people, and they make a lot of good points. And one of them clearly didn't totally buy the dystopian thing, but being an editor, writer at the New Yorker is like, you really don't want to fess up. Although, the point of the New Yorker is to write stuff that challenges people. And so they have written articles, but the conversation was completely around kind of when is the world going to end.
Ooh, man, it's so interesting because you spend time in two circles. I would say, based on what you just said, you spend a time in two circles. One is technology circle, and I know because I'm in that as well. That's not like what you just said, but the other one is the cultural creatives circle, and the cultural creatives of the United States, which is an empire and dominates well, until very recently dominated the rest of the world.
It's just that there are more people with the voice, i.e. the
Well,
Chinese.
okay, yes, yeah. So yeah, go for it.
Well, it's this is as true as it has ever been, although the time scale has shrunk a lot. But when the personal computer was introduced, China wasn't a major country.
Yeah.
Europe was still really enjoying its cafes, and a little bit of the Brits got in there. What the hell's it called? Senior moment. I'll come back to me. But there was a British company that now is one of the most important companies in the world. ARM. Yeah, excuse me. Advanced Research Machines originally, but now called ARM. That came out of England. And there were some others, but that was the one that survived through. I mean, it's a 40-year-old company. But now it is the predominant architecture for microprocessors. But anyway, back then it was like they didn't even know. They weren't even asking the question. It was like, the Yanks get all up, excited about this stuff, in Popular Mechanics and geek magazines at the time. But it wasn't until the internet that people started to go, oh, maybe this is something I should pay attention to. And it started to spread worldwide. But it started in the US, and so the worldwide part was always like at least 2 steps behind. So when Web3 happened, it was like, no, we're just doing the internet here. And the mobile phone, it took a while, particularly the iPhone. Apple's very aggressive about it, so they have very dominant market share in the US and high market share in some countries and not so much in others. But smartphones are all smartphones now, and they all work essentially the same, sort of 90% the same. So there's iPhoneers and Androiders and whatever. But AI has like broken through the popular imagination, and they're still 1 step behind. Right?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, if this panel session I went to for the New Yorker is any indication, they didn't mention agentic web browsers, and it is.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. They're just afraid of it. They don't want to use it. I mean, they're using it.
Actually, these guys are not aware of it. They haven't caught on to it yet, because Atlas was just introduced and Comet was just introduced a couple of weeks before that. And Atlas and Comet are the current faves. There's Gemini, of course, which is embedded in Chrome. So Chrome is beginning to have agentic features because of Gemini. But for the others, you have to switch to a different browser. But all those browsers are based on Chromium, which is the core of Chrome. And of course, Google is considered a trustworthy platform developer. So all the AI companies have adopted Chromium as their base for implementing a new browser. So it's very easy to switch back and forth. I personally haven't done it yet because I'm traveling and you have to set aside X amount of time, with X being an unknown number, to play with these things and figure it out. But both reviewers at the Wall Street Journal, the reviewer at the New York Times, a reviewer at The Verge are like going, holy crap, this is happening. But the New Yorker,
they're scared of it. But is there any hope? Like, is there any talk of this could be a good thing at all? Like, how can you describe
actually, more? No, it's just the thing. It's like, this is what's countering the dystopian view. The utopian view is agents developed on this platform of artificial intelligence are actually the thing that are going to unlock and the real value for individual users. And so there's beginning to be we're not just stuck with these dystopian chatbots that mess with your mind. There's actually functionality here that will be useful to people, which is, of course, the thing I've been harping on is like, okay, a chatbot, whatever, there's certain things you can do with it that are useful, but you always have to be careful with them. And whereas agents, if they're acting on your own behalf, and this is the experience that I've heard all the reviewers mention, is you open one of your agentic browsers, and you tell it to go find tickets, airplane tickets or restaurant reservations or whatever. It takes forever. So you keep working in whatever browser you're already using. And then you go and look at it and you go, well, it was pretty good, but I'll have to fix this and this. And then it takes another X amount of time for it to fix what it done. So it's very slow. And the value has to be
immediate. So yeah. So
no, you're going the wrong way. It's like the value has to be good enough that you won't spend the time. But the promise is that at some point it will be fast. And so it's fast and works and you can rely on it. Then you really have an assistant that can help you navigate this whole thing. And that is utopian, not dystopian.
Yeah. So they're getting a hint. They're getting a hint
of it.
They're getting a hint of the promise.
Yeah, when agents start running wild on you and you're not paying attention anymore, maybe they could like wipe your computer out.
Yeah, well, so that just opened up a whole thread because I love what you're talking about is people who are like have seen the last 20 years, their 30 years from the outside and seen it just eviscerate all of their business models, all of the way that the culture transmits, all of the way that they have remained dominant, and they're looking at this AI thing and they're like, oh, like that represents even more of a threat. And now they're getting a little taste of what I've already been in for about 2 years, which is this agentic behavior. Because the agentic behavior that's in the browser is secondary to the agentic behavior that's in a command line terminal. And the command line terminal has been really interesting to go into because I've been all of our episodes, like this ARM thing, ARM, I have now know what that is because I just got my Raspberry Pi set up and it's on the ARM architecture. I've learned all these things from the agentic command line terminal, these agents inside the command line terminal, because I just tell them what to do and it goes on my computer and does all these things.
I know what you're talking about, but perhaps our viewers need to know what a command line terminal is. And
Good point. Yeah,
I'll take it on. I mean, even the Apple II, when it started, had no graphical user interface.
Yeah.
Well, it did, but the apps had a graphical interface. So the spreadsheet and word processors had their own interface. But in between, you were really stuck with a command line interface. And of course, the IBM PC, MS-DOS, had a command line interface. And it's been the way that people have interacted with computers before a graphical user interface showed up, which was like with the Macintosh and after that. So
it's really geeky stuff. It's really geeky stuff. Like the only person who would use a command line terminal is a programmer who's like in an IT section who never talks to anybody and is like just doing their job. Like nobody.
Command line interface just refers to there's a single line of text with a prompt on it, which may be just a caret or it might be some words, and you type commands in. I can't even remember some of them, but like in the IBM PC, like that, so text. And this has always been in movies. It's like you see that on the screen, and like people just take that as scary, and because what the hell, So you write a command. Now that your like number of commands you need to know in order to vibe code is very small. It used to be that you'd need to know hundreds of commands to control the computer in all of its respects, including coding. So you'd write a line of code, and then you'd execute it. And so the command line interface is the baseline for how humans talk to computers. And this is, for the computer, easy to translate into ones and zeros and do its work. And I think we talked about this at one point, but there was back in the day when I was editor of InfoWorld, there was an advertiser who took the back page of all the magazines, InfoWorld, PC World, PC Magazine, all of them, and said the last one. And the whole idea there was, this is the last time you'll ever have to write. It's beyond writing programs. We're going to let you do anything you want on a computer. And this is back in the day when computers were, relatively speaking, pretty primitive. And so it was like it wasn't a scam because they actually thought they were doing this, but the last one never came out.
Well, until today, because now we have I'm not
kind of on the edge. You're still opening up a terminal window and writing commands.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You don't have to do that often, right? Most of us can get by with just using what's presented to us on mobile phones and computers. But there's this thinner line between that and going to the command line interface and programming, which is now called vibe coding.
Okay, that's really interesting what you just said there, because the command line interface is an application as well. It's just a very basic application that has
Terminal
been.
window, yeah. I mean, it's like there's a text program on the Mac, and most people don't even know it's there. That just opens text, doesn't do anything else, just opens text, and it can show you a document. And then the difference between the terminal on the Mac and the text viewer is very small. It's like they're tiny programs that don't do anything except.
So, and this is really interesting because I did an interview with the founder of OpenCode this week, and OpenCode is the open source version of a command line interface agent terminal, where you can basically send the agents to do your bidding, and they do it really well, as long as you know the variables. And so OpenCode is competing with Gemini CLI, which I want to talk about Google later, and then it's competing with Codex, and it's competing with Claude. And all of these guys, this is there because they want to win the developers, because they all think AGI is coming through the developers through code. Well, let's talk about Google, because Google they've got their influencer marketers. They've started to give Gemini 3 to their influencer marketers on Twitter. Either that or these influencer marketers are lying, which has been happening as well. But Gemini 3 is coming out probably. And Gemini 3, I just did a deep dive on the numbers from Google based on all the many shows that we've done. Google has $110 billion total cash and securities in 2024. OpenAI has raised $57 billion across 11 rounds total. So that's the total amount of money, and they're losing money. They're losing a lot of money. Anthropic has raised $27.3 billion, so almost half of what OpenAI has done. And the kicker is that Google will have another $110 billion in profit this year. So not just the cash treasury that they have, they're going to get 110.
Key number, just so you know, is free cash flow.
Free cash flow. Okay,
great. Capital has to get deducted from the net profit before you get to earnings.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Appreciation. So there's the free cash flow is actually the critical number, because it's the amount of money you have left over after you've operated the company and sold your stuff, and that you can reinvest in the company. So in the case of Google, it might not be a whole lot different, because their search business is so intensely profitable.
And this is the question. It's like, how does Google not just win this? Like, everybody's like, oh, Google's dead, and they've been saying that for 2 or 3 years, but like, Google's not dead.
More because they this thing of putting
some guy said it a week ago. Some investors like, Google's screwed, and it's like, no, they aren't. They're about to drop something huge.
You have to look at your source.
Yeah.
No, right now, Google's had a decline in search traffic, but a very small decline, like a few percentage points year over year. So most people still default to using the search bar. And of course, they start getting Gemini anyway, which is a brilliant tactical move. When they sue Google for antitrust again in 5 or 6 years, that will be the key basis on which the suit is filed. It's like they just use their search business to dominate and it's interesting, because when we logged on, my Chrome browser asked me if I wanted to adopt Gemini. And so I don't know what it's doing behind the scenes, but I said yes. And because we're using Riverside inside of Chrome. And so in theory, I guess I could open a chat window side by side with Riverside and start using that to ask questions. I don't know if that's what that was the first one. Switch to Chrome. So it's like it's a whole new experience for me.
So the browser, let's go into the browser, because that's a part of history that I'm not really familiar with. And the browser is so important based on everything we've been talking about, most particularly because Google is about to integrate everything into it. So when did the browser become important besides 1994? We've already covered 1994 and 1996. If anybody wants to listen to it, go listen to the 60 episodes we have published already. So that's 1994 to 1997. When did people, like probably Google, once their search business in 2001 started going on, that's about when they started to look at the browser as something that could be defined, and that led to JavaScript, right?
Let me back up a little. Marc Andreessen.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
built the first
Yeah, of course.
browser.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, I got a little fuzzy on this, but I think it was called Mosaic. And Mosaic came out of his experience at the University of Illinois. They built the first version at the university. Then he was recruited by Netscape. Recruited by Kleiner Perkins to help start Netscape, and which also had a different name. So that's why I lose this. I lose track of it, the renamings. The inheritor of that is Firefox.
Yep.
So it's still there, but it's like a minor thing. But at the time, Mosaic was the browser that everybody got introduced to the internet on, right? Because otherwise you were in the command line interface, you had to figure out how to try to traverse the internet with commands. And, I wasn't able to do it. And
oh, interesting.
I'm not technically competent, but I'm sort of well informed. And so that's approximately when Bill Gates wrote his memo. The internet memo, I think it's called, where he said, "This is a life-changing event. There's a good chance that we won't survive because in the history of technology, when life-changing events happen, incumbents have a tendency to lose, i.e., IBM." So he wrote that memo, and they still fucked it up. So they knew, but fucked it up because they didn't know what the terms were.
Yeah.
So they introduced. They've changed the name of their browser so many times. I can't remember what it is now, but I think it's called Edge.
Yep.
And there are people like Edge, right? Because it integrates so well with
with all their other
they've tried to pull repeatedly, which I've fallen for twice and regretted both times. It's all built by Microsoft, though. It must all work with all of Microsoft software really well. Actually, it doesn't. Their own software doesn't work with their own software. Certainly not at the level that like Macintosh has demonstrated. And so there's multiple iterations from that point on until where we are today, including the fact these agentic browsers are the latest thing that might get you to switch browsers. And
yeah, interesting. There's no way I'm switching from Chrome unless there's something extremely attractive to me, because Chrome is integrated in a way that Microsoft never integrated. So when did that start? When did that start with Google doing that?
God, the integration is like, it's the thing that hangs major companies on the petard of their own wishful thinking. Bill Gates subsequently wrote, actually it was before the browsers, they wanted to integrate the database into the operating system.
Oh, interesting.
So that there would be no difference between running an application and getting data. And that applications and everything would just be data, and they would have a relational database that would integrate the entire ecosystem. They were never able to deliver it.
Wow.
They tried, and that's why Windows 95 was like 6 years after Windows 3.0, I think it was. Anyway, so again, this is in the midst of my memory. So they had to give up on it, and now Microsoft believes it's not possible. It's not something they can do, right? Because they had this experience, and it's baked into everybody's point of view. This is how companies operate. They try something, it fails, and then they go, "Well, we can't do that." And in fact, technically speaking, Macintosh figured out how to do it. And partially because they adopted this ARM architecture very early on, because next was the formation for the Mac OS.
Wait. So Mac was able to put a database in the operating system and connect it all together because of ARM.
Actually, when you use a Mac, that's kind of what you're using. Their integration is not great, right? Because there are trade-offs you make against performance, but the Mac had a different measure of performance, and so Unix. And Mac is running on Unix now. You just don't know it.
Yep.
And actually, if you open a terminal window, you can use Unix commands to control Mac. But they hide it really well because they don't want all 2 billion users using it or whatever the user count is. They don't want them messing around.
Wait. What did you just say? I don't understand what you just meant by that.
They hide the Unix interface incredibly well. It's very hard to find at the Mac. So normal people won't stumble across it and like wipe their hard disk by mistake.
Oh, got it. Whoa, that's a little piece of treasure you said right there. Because I'm still going to ask later about how the browser actually happened, but the Unix kernel inside of the Mac, what I just understood there is basically total openness into everything the computer can do, and they hide it because they don't want users. I wonder what I've done with my LLM agent with that inside of there.
It's not that they hide it per se. It's not that they want to keep people from using it. They just want the really technically proficient people.
Yeah.
Because you can do a lot of damage in the kernel. But there is a robust Unix kernel sitting there in the middle of the Mac operating system that came from Next. And they made that transition when they acquired Next, and Steve started running the company, and that was what's his name? Just barely see it, but the guy who was their chief technical officer, or chief software officer,
Avi Teneman.
Yes, thank you. Avi Teneman mapped out how to both move the kernel of Unix to the Mac OS and kind of jack up the whole thing and put in a new operating system, and then transition, and that allowed them to transition from the Motorola chipset to the Intel chipset to the ARM chipset. They develop themselves, and so they own their own
interesting
ARM. So Apple is incredibly, this could be a problem for them in the future, but incredibly vertically integrated. Right? They own the operating system, they own the kernel, they do all the layers from the kernel above, and the application layer and the development kits and everything. Right. So when you program in the Macintosh environment, you know exactly what you're programming against. And this is the inherent difference. So we're traded off the browser for a while here. But the reason Microsoft has such a leaky boat and so easy to hack is because they don't control everything. They had Windows against the Intel architecture, and it was really closely bound because of the way they started. And they've never been able to run a Windows machine on top of an ARM architecture. And that was what tripped them up when it got to the mobile phone as well.
Whoa. That's a big piece. That explains why Microsoft was always a pain in the ass to deal with when I was trying to play video games in the 90s. So that's what Apple figured out, is they needed, because of Steve Jobs' insane attention to detail and his sort of tyrannical nature or totalitarian nature. So he basically controlled this whole thing so that nobody could break in, and that's what makes Apple
smart enough to know far enough in advance where they had ended up that he started implementing the multiple generations. By the time the iPhone came out, iOS and Mac OS were still very different. And they've been on a trend line of trying to make them the same. Right? There's always this talk about, well, the iPad should just be like a laptop. But they haven't been able to, that's why they haven't been able to put it together. And so Tim Cook kind of shined on that, and now they have TV OS, and they have Mac OS, and iOS, and they have iPad OS. They have different implementations of the same operating system, but the Mac is still not the same operating system as the OSs. So you know, that's a relatively minor problem from their point of view, because they've got this gigantic infrastructure that is able to surf back and forth from Mac to ARM, not ARM, sorry, to iPhone OS or its inheritors.
Got it. Oh, interesting. So he went and he created a bunch of different OSs based on the fact that they could own the entire chipset.
Steve didn't like that at all.
Oh,
It's the same operating system, right? And from his point of view, there was iOS and Mac OS. There were only two operating systems, and they tried to make them more and more the same. But a computer operating system is much harder to merge with a phone operating system because you don't have a keyboard. And
wait, what does the keyboard do? Why is a keyboard important?
Keyboard lets you type. You can type.
More input, and
No,
but
typing input as opposed to fingers, right? You can't
got it.
type on this thing except for like iMessage, right?
Yep.
And I mean, I can
Yeah,
write
got it. Yeah.
just
But
different
that's changing now. That's changing now because the voice with the AI. So that's gonna get us to the last
voice
program.
is very imprecise. It's like
Yeah.
you say it one way, I say it another way. And the operating system manage that and know what
Interesting.
precisely, right?
So it needs to stay in text.
You're typing letters, so if you make a mistake, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it needs to stay in text in order to be rigorous.
Remember that everything still goes to ones and zeros.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's either on or off. Qubits are a whole different thing, but that's in the future.
I want to ask a question about whether you think it's all hype, but and that's actually Google. So let's bring that back to the browser.
Even IBM is a competitor in the quantum space.
Yeah. So the browser in the 2000s, what was happening after Google? How did Google do it? How did Google own the entire thing in a way that Microsoft couldn't?
Well, if you open any browser and did a Google search, the Google search itself was always just as fast because it was behind the browser. It's all about.
Wait. What do you mean by behind the browser?
Well, you type it into the browser, but all the stuff that happened, how they implemented that search happened on the internet. So the amount of interaction between the search and the infrastructure was minimal. So there was a feeling that that the user interface of the browser had to be like the computer, right? That you were having access to all these computers, remote computers, and it should be. So there was a bunch of experimentation about how the browser should work, and there were a ton of browsers introduced, but it turned out just to be a matter of how much muscle you had. And Google search was the biggest item of muscle, right? Because everybody wanted to search. They wanted to find out. When I started using Mosaic, it was clicking around. You'd click and you'd go to thing. Oh my God, look at all this cool stuff. And you'd find, and I remember I was about 2 or 3 months just not doing my job and clicking around. Fortunately, InfoWorld was a well-oiled machine, so it didn't need me, and I just explored the internet. That was the original experience in the browser, and that was all by clicking, not by command line. But the developers were operating at the command line level, and so it turned out that it was not important what the user interface was to the browser.
Yeah, interesting.
Bookmarks and your tabs, and it's all pretty much the same. So what redounded to Google was the fact that everybody wanted to do search, and they had it distinct. And so they ruled in search, and their ruling in search gave them the ability in both the browser and email, ironically, because the way they designed Gmail, was that you didn't need to delete. They just stored everything. The whole concept, this is still true on Microsoft, was really interesting. I just read an article. The Verge has a Microsoft newsletter, and the guy who writes it says, I'm off for 3 weeks, but before I leave, you should know that Microsoft is going to try to unify their email. This is like the 15th time they've tried to unify their email. Even the name Outlook is confusing because there's like Microsoft Live or something like that, which is their kind of, they bought Yahoo. I can't remember who they bought, but they bought an email program, and it's still different than their main email program, but they apply the way Outlook to it, and they're 2 different programs. So actually now it's Microsoft Office 365 is the new email for their corporate garbage. And I guess it's Microsoft Outlook is still the consumer version. It's just like Microsoft tries to do everything all at once, and they can't really pull it off. So they end up with this kind of mess of names, and nobody can figure it out. So I read this article that they're going to try to unify their email. And it's like, they've been trying to unify things forever, and they never succeed because they're Microsoft.
But how did Google do it? Because we've talked many times on the show that Google is not the best at product either, but it's because of search. Because they just had it. Yeah.
Taste email. they aced email at the time
Oh,
they
interesting.
introduced Gmail.
Yeah.
There's all these apps, and they were desktop apps, and you'd have to open the app and you'd have to hook it up, and you'd get your email. AOL was like that. And I mean, email is a very simple infrastructure. Like when you type an email address, the routing of email and the way you manage email is a very simple thing. And so Google did the right thing in introducing Gmail. They made it a very simple program. And the astonishing thing was you didn't have to delete. They had no concept of archive delete. From a normal user's point of view, what's the difference between archiving? You archive so you can save local disk space, right? Yeah, this is the way Microsoft works. They have the archive command, and other programs do too. There's no archive in Gmail because you don't delete anything. I mean, if you delete it, what's the point? It's like, so you delete your spam. Well, that's a stupid thing to do. Just so they nailed the architecture for doing email in a way that at the time when they introduced Gmail was astonishing, right? The fact that I have Alsop at Gmail is a function of the fact that we knew it at the time, that Gmail was the best email. So I got my, you can't get your first initial last name anymore on Gmail because there's like billions of users and then billions of people that are registering email addresses, to try to spam you. And here's the denouement of that whole thing. Gmail was introduced.
I'm looking it up right now because my mind was going there right now.
Let's see. No, they started in 99, so it must have been
2004.
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah.
And the browser, you can ask when did Google introduce Chrome. I'm not sure it was called Chrome at the time. They may have changed the name, but
2008.
So it was after the email. And so, this is Google. Like in their first 10 years, they're sitting going, holy crap, we've got this thing called search. Now, how do we use it to take everything? And so they had basically an integrated architecture designed on top of the basic internet protocols. They didn't try to mess with that. They gave you added benefit on the client side and on the internet side, but they didn't try to mess with the basics. So they just accepted what it was, and these are the three things they've done: is search, email, and web browsing. And the others, this is where the other stuff kind of falls off. It's like they've tried to do. Ever used Google Slides? I think it's called.
Yeah, well, so that's actually the interesting thing. I do use Google Slides. I use Google Docs. And you know why? It's because, so I just created my crazy wisdom domain. And now because I'm a technical, I've created my Google domain and I've set up my Google domain. And it's because they actually switched me off Google Zoom. I'm sorry, they switched me off Zoom meetings so that I could go to Meet because I can do Meet for free.
Yeah.
And they've got
the whole companies that made that decision.
Yeah.
Right. Zoom is really expensive if you've got more than 100 people.
Yep. So they like after using Google in all these different products and growing up with them, because I grew up with Docs, I grew up with all these different things, like having used all those products, I do think they do those products pretty well. And it's in a suite. Yeah.
If you open up Google Drive, are you looking at a file system? Or
I hate Drive. I hate Drive so much.
It's like recent. Yeah. You just look at who the hell designed this?
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah.
So where they fall down is on the integrated enterprise side, right? So Google Cloud, Drive, Google Office, they call it maybe. And that stuff has been very slow because they don't know how to deal with IT people. They prefer to
wait. Explain that comment. What do you mean they don't know how to deal with IT people, and why I assume Microsoft does?
People are in between a user and the adoption, and so the IT people can tell you what to use. So if you live inside a Microsoft company that uses Microsoft, I have this problem.
Tyrants. Yeah.
Alsop II is based on Exchange, Microsoft, and so we use SharePoint. I still don't know how to use SharePoint, and it gets in my way. Like I have to do some SharePoint thing, and I go like, And that's because Microsoft figured out how to deal with the IT people. And it was actually a big surprise they pulled this off, because they were like their original customer with the programmer. Right? And they did not like IT people any more than anybody else did. But
Wait. I thought programmers and IT people were the same.
No, there's a big set of programmers that are not IT. And then all IT people are programmers.
IT people. Okay, got it. So IT people are a subset of programmers who own all the resource. No,
it's different. It's different. You can't think of it as a subset. Just because both sides know how to program doesn't mean that it's the same thing, right? Developers who write programs, commercial applications, or and then IT people who do not sell anything are different. So there are different sets of programmers who use different tools. They're different ecosystems. You can't put them one on top of the other, or vice versa. So just because they have skills.
What do IT people do?
IT people basically are designed to say no, because I mean, I'll give you a very precise example. I think we talked about this. I don't think we were recording at the time. My Meg Whitman anecdote. I don't think we were on.
I think we did it a couple weeks ago.
We made it, but anyway, so she shows up at eBay, and within like a couple of months, eBay goes offline for an entire week, which is like,
we talked about
unheard of. And the reason was that their engineers, the programmers, were running their IT.
A
big issue if you've got a lot of servers running a scaled up service. Are all those servers on the same version of the operating system that they're running? And what happened at eBay is that they had their operating system, the way of updating their servers, operating systems, was flawed. And if you have two servers running next to each other, and one of them has a more advanced version of an operating system than the one next to it, even though it's the same operating system, you get holes. Those features. And the newer operating system was designed to solve a problem, and the one that hasn't been updated hasn't solved that problem yet. And the problem occurs, and it just nails the entire service. So there's a lot of more sophisticated ways to design services. But at the time, eBay was running the same. It was Sun Microsystems. They were all running on Sun Microsystems, and the servers were out of sync, and the whole thing collapsed. And how you solve that is you have to go find the ones that are out of sync or have a problem and isolate them. And this just happened with Amazon Web Services.
I was going to ask.
They had a problem with their DNS system, which is domain naming system. So it got out of sync, and it took out some portion. I think it was mostly on the East Coast. It's very hard to run a scaled system with billions of users in it, and part of the way that you do that is by you don't let people mess with it. So you say no. No, you can't. You can't adopt this. I just had this with Microsoft where I'm trying out. I wanted to integrate. I finally got Alexa Plus on 2 days before I leave town, and I wanted it to show me my calendar. So I tried to expose my Exchange calendar to them, and the IT people said no. And I'm going like, why? Oh, well, because that might take down our entire infrastructure. I go, what are you fucking saying?
Yeah,
if that's true, we should not be doing business with you. If our infrastructure is that unstable that access to one email address can take the whole thing down. And I did it again because I also gave access to something else, and the CEO of the company got on the thread and said, we don't do this. And I said, we do. It's our job to play with new products. So you damn well better let me have this.
So I need to understand the characters involved. Are you saying not the CEO of Microsoft? Who is your IT
of our internet, our IT
for Alsop Louis that runs all your? Is it
that's a company that
yeah? Okay, I got it.
I mean, we only have like 6 employees. It's like we don't have room for an IT.
Common? Is that common for
particularly for small companies?
Who are the big companies that offer that as a service?
Completely
consulting.
It's a consulting business where they monitor your network and make sure your computers are up to date and blah blah blah.
Okay, and that's an interesting.
They say they'll do both Microsoft and Gmail. Google. And it's a really interesting kind of political thing because Microsoft is authorized by the federal government.
Yeah.
These really, because they're considered reliable and secure.
Yep.
Neither of which is true. They're not reliable and they're not secure. But it's been a decision that was made like 15 or 20 years ago in the government. And Google's never been able to crack it because everybody goes, oh, Google, like they're looking at your email.
Oh, interesting. Oh, man.
And the truth is that Google's infrastructure is way more solid and secure. I mean, the net effect to me is I get 4 or 5 spams a day in my Microsoft-based email, and I get none in my Gmail.
So this brings us back to China, and then there was another question I wanted to go off on another tangent.
We're on browsers.
Yeah. So I know, and that, but there's I want to put it into the record because I want to talk about the question afterwards, which is like, what does AI do to all these IT systems? But before going into that, let's talk about the browser. How did the browser come about in 2008?
So, remember Web 2.0?
Yeah. Web 1.0. Web 1.0.
No, there was never a Web 1.0. 1.0 was the internet.
That's what I'm saying.
The internet, right? Yeah. We didn't call it the web. We called it the internet, and you had internet browsers. Web 2.0 was named by his name at some point along the way here.
It's not Negroponte because that's the other one, right?
That's we're not talking convergence. We're talking a similar thing, which is the internet browser. Web 2.0 is where you did get what's the J in JSON mean?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. What does J in JSON mean?
It must be jet lag.
JavaScript.
Java.
Yep.
So you got into RESTful interfaces, right? Where you separated the programming of the browser, of the applications in the browser, and what happened on the back end, right? That RESTful thing mean you did not need to maintain state between the client and the server. It's interesting. I mean, they're pretty stateful or RESTful are the opposite. So if you have a stateful internet, you can't lose the internet. You can't lose the connection, right? You're completely synchronous between the client and the server, and they're updating each other constantly, which is an incredible load to put on the internet. So when a RESTful designed and it separated the two so that you didn't have to maintain state. You could recover, or and I'm losing my sophisticated terms here, but so that led to a revolution in how applications that operated through the browser, and that was Web 2.0. And Web 2.0 just preceded the social media, right? So and enabled social media, right? So you could sit there on Twitter in a browser, and it's pumping stuff. You're writing in real time, right? It's pumping stuff into your feed. And Twitter originally was not a RESTful interface, and all the apps had to go through this. Facebook was not either. But once they figured out how to do this, it allowed them to scale much more than they had previously, and it basically took over. I mean, if you have banking applications, really hardcore stuff, you don't want to leave a connection to your bank account open. RESTful APIs allowed the kind of non-critical applications to spread the load, and this is speaking at an architectural level. And it allowed these applications to scale very rapidly. So Facebook went from only operating in .edu to operating on .com.
.edu?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, but every time Facebook would introduce a difference in their user interface, the whole thing would crash. And people talked about how broken it was, and the whole Facebook thing of,
move fast and break things.
Move fast and break things was exactly true. But it didn't work for most of the users because they go like, Facebook wasn't working. And like, oh, crap. So that Web 2.0 was a really important transition, which really integrated the browser into daily operations, and both as a user and in the enterprise. And so that was an incredible breakthrough. Tim O'Reilly is the guy who named it Web 2.0. He wrote a paper called Web 2.0. And Tim O'Reilly is a guy to pay attention to because he really understands what's going on. So when they started using the RESTful APIs in the browser, then the browser became way more functional and way more reliable, at least from a user point of view, because it kind of worked around the fact that it's an unstable environment. Inherently,
why is it an unstable environment?
Designed to be unstable, right? You could do an EMP and have lose 20% of the internet, still have the other 80% operating. It's like that was built into the whole idea of the protocols for the web browser and for the internet.
Wow.
Since then, we haven't seen that much action in browsers, right? There's been it was like the browser company. They just changed the name of their browser.
Yeah, Dia.
From whatever it was. So Dia is one of the agentic browsers out there. And but people starting new browser companies when Microsoft and Apple and Google are duking it out. It's like, why do it? It's like all you're going to do is spend a lot of money and get nowhere. But now and this is why agentic web browsers are so important. Now there are people that believe they can make browsers that will take you off of using whatever browser you're using, whether it's Safari or
there's a moment here. So the sharks are swimming around the red ocean.
Bingo. And this is like a huge deal. Competitively, it's a huge deal.
Yeah, interesting.
Because OpenAI believes that with Atlas, nobody will need Chrome anymore.
Yeah.
And so they can control the whole experience. And maybe you don't need chatbots if you have agents running around on your behalf. So it's like a real
interesting. Yeah.
Really competitive. I mean, they're sitting there like sweating bullets trying to figure out, OpenAI has raised whatever it is, 500 billion. No, they're worth 500 billion. I can't remember how much they've raised, but there's a lot riding on these foundational models, because the user interface isn't settled. It's not necessarily a chat.
Yeah, it's a wide open world. And I'm getting into designing user interfaces, which is giving me another insight. This is what I love about doing the show, is that you share these stories about the history, and then during the week I go and use this command line interface and start to get hit with these things that, like the ARM architecture and these other things, and now I get it. Like I understand the arc.
The ecosystem. Yeah. I would be challenged to tell you why the ARM industry architecture is better.
And that's where the geeky autist hiding in his room probably is the guy who could tell me that if I could understand him. Or the AI. The AI.
Yeah. What's the difference?
What's the difference?
Architecture. What's the difference of the ARM architecture?
Architecture and the what?
Just what's the difference of the ARM architecture?
Oh, okay.
Compared to anything else. Motorola, Intel, they were all proprietary architecture.
ARM is a RISC, RISC, reduced instruction set computing.
Yeah.
ARM doesn't manufacture most chips.
Yeah. It's
dominant mobile. Embedded. Yeah.
RISC architecture means that the core instruction set in the kernel of the operating system is fewer commands. And it means that as you're creating generations of chips, microprocessors, and et cetera, you have this smaller kernel, and more of the load is outside of it. It means that you have more flexibility as you move from one generation to the next. It's kind of how I interpret it.
Wait. So this is very important, because now I've got my Raspberry Pi set up. So now I'm starting to get into the hardware world, and firmware is now starting to become more of a thing that I am starting to just grok the little tiny bit. And it's about embedded systems. And this goes into your theory about, which you talked about a long time, about the Ethernet, which is sort of related to the Internet of Things, which most people are are not. There's no one talking about it right now. Although I think now is where it's actually.
Word has not come into general use, but it
Yeah.
is a core principle.
So
So the ARM architecture, actually, Amazon developed its own server chips, which are based on the ARM architecture. So you have Apple, which developed its own chips, the M's and the A's, and then Amazon developed its own chips for servers, and they're both the ARM architectures. So the instruction set is similar in both cases, but the applications to servers or to computers or phones are different. So, the core is the same, but the layers on top of it are different depending on how they're being used.
Okay, well, I've got a question I got to ask for the last 10 minutes or so, which is, I want to start building hardware. At first, I was going to get somebody to bring me down a drone kit, and then AI told me, "Don't start with drones. Don't start there." What can you give me a curriculum where? What is the first thing I should do now that I have my Raspberry Pi? What are the companies that you've seen fail trying to do things? And like, what are the first things that I should do in order to enter this world? Not necessarily to build things, but to understand what to tell the AI to build, kind of thing.
That's way too general, and I don't know enough about you.
I'll make more specific. So you've seen companies do 3D printing. I remember there was one company that started to do 3D printing for action figures, which was really cool. Then I also saw Device Authority. There's a whole bunch of things in the physical world that you've invested in, and I want to understand like how to enter that world.
Oh God,
It's a big world though, right? Because it's like it's hardware.
don't. The Device Authority is trying to deal with the fact that there are a bunch of machines used in this is very basic, but
Yeah.
a bunch of machines used in factories that were developed to do one specific task.
Yeah,
and there
yeah,
was no operating system or memory in those devices. They usually used ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits. And so because there was no memory and no operating system, it couldn't exist as a peer on the network. Right? It didn't have enough resources in it. So they never got connected. This is ironic because this is what happened when whoever it was took out the Iranian.
Spetsnaz or whatever. Or not yeah. I know what you're talking about. The centrifuges.
The centrifuges, because the only way to get to them was to physically go into that site. And so somebody snuck in there with a little flash drive and stuck the flash drive into the centrifuges, and they all started whacking out. So the idea of an connected device, that's an IoT, Internet of Things. That's a connected device with an operating system that exists as a peer to all the other devices and can manage the protocols and the communications. Device Authority, try it. Its problem has been that this is a really slow process and you need a lot of money to do it. But they tried to figure out how to put something on those devices that would allow them to be a peer on the network.
Whoa.
And it was called Device Authority, right? Device identification. So it could identify itself and know how to communicate to be upgraded over the air. So that you'd have a flexible system that would keep up with changes in the network. That's been a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. Well, no, I got my answer, I think, and it's so we've got software, we got firmware, we got hardware. Firmware sits between the software and the hardware and allows the limitless ability of software to do anything to fit inside of this thing that needs to do things. Yeah. And so
Raspberry Pi has a full operating system.
Yeah.
It's a very basic.
I got my question. So you know about ESP32, right?
No, I don't.
ESP32. So you know Arduino. You know Arduino, right?
Yeah, I know what an Arduino
is. So ESP32 is the low-cost competitor that actually destroyed Arduino recently. Arduino just had something happen because of a tool chain. So they're out of the race, and then there's an Indian company building FPGA Arduino type of things. So the Arduino ESP32 I should get that next. What can I do with it that you've seen something interesting be done?
I've never seen any of these things.
Meow.
Meowth has a lot of.
What are they doing with it?
You're in the domain of sensors.
Yeah,
Sensors
okay.
are special purpose devices.
Yeah, okay. I got it.
Right. That
Yeah.
whether it's light or touch or.
Yeah, interesting.
Meowth is deploying a lot of. And I'm not sure if it's Arduino or Pi, but
Yeah.
I think they're using Raspberries, but I never really asked. So
Yeah.
I don't. But they are trying to make their exhibits truly interactive. In other words, they know that you're nearby, right? They're actually using the signal on the phone to do that, not a bracelet or other thing. They don't want anybody to have to put something on when they go into a meow wall. So that's their constraint. So they want to know where you are, what you're looking at, and be able to identify you and respond to you as an individual. This is still mostly in the future. Because if you have like 30,000 people inside an exhibit at one time, that's a real-time operating system problem.
Whoa.
By the way, real-time operating system. And because you can't like misidentify the person that's near the sensor. And it's very hard to distinguish if you've got 10 people sitting there near this, which one's which. But that's their ideal, is that they can respond to you and make you feel like they know who you are and respond to what you've already done in the exhibit and who you are outside the exhibit. That's still largely wishful. No one's really figured it out. Disney is using a wristband to do it. You can register for a ride.
Identifier. A unique identifier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unique ID. So it's hard for me to tell you what you should do.
I gave it
you
to me.
need
I already know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I can build sensors. I can start to build sensors that do things in my room. I heard that they gave trucks smell recently. So refrigeration trucks now have smell, so they can smell when things have gone bad.
Oh, they have a sensor that can. Okay, yeah. That's a really hard thing. This is probably the hardest to reproduce, right? Your eyesight, your ears.
Yeah.
Taste and smell are.
Yeah. Interesting. Are you interesting? Okay, well, I think that's probably good. Anything else you want to share?
I'll just say on that topic, we did look at a bunch of companies that do sense and taste and smell. And the real problem is, it's not a trick word, but if you don't understand the ontology of a space, then you can't create a sensor for it. And what I mean by that is you have to understand so automatic vehicles, AVs, are really interesting because the amount of sensing that they have to do all at the same time. And, Tesla's based all of its future on what they call the robots. Anyway, that they're going to be an AI company going forward. So it's Grok and
interesting.
And the robots, and it's a fully integrated, futuristic company. And they just admitted that they're not going to. What the hell is their robots called? But
Optimus. Optimus.
Yeah. Musk had promised last year they would build 5,000 Optimus robots this year. And he just admitted in October that they're probably not going to do that. And probably won't get to scale until the end of the next year, which he always just puts it far enough out that you can't really tell.
Interesting.
Or if he knows. But anyway, so.
Man. So you looked at a bunch. Yeah, we've gone really deep into very technical things. Hopefully our listeners haven't had their heads explode.
Right. I mean, we were talking about browsers. So now we're sitting here using Chrome for recording a video podcast of what do they call them? Video blogs or V-blogs? Terrible term. And what it's doing, which is really interesting, is and when we have a guest on, it's also doing it. It's recording separate streams for both of us, right?
Yeah.
I'm streaming and you're streaming. It's recording them separately so that even if the visuals are out of focus or if the audio is screwed up, it still records all the data so that when it reproduces it and produces a stream that's integrated that we can publish, then it all makes sense and works.
And I'm showing how it might show up on the live stream is very different for each one, but on the recording, this is totally figurable. I can go later and change this based on things that I want to.
Streams, you can change the size and how it appears next to each other or on top, picture in picture.
We got to get the Twitch crew on this show. I think that would be fun to get some of the guys there.
The original Twitch crew, because I did see the current CEO.
Interesting.
Very interesting looking guy. I saw him at the Screen Time conference. They had the CEO of Twitch on the program, and Danny, something like that. But but I don't know. Probably Emmett would be the guy because he was the chief technical officer of Justin TV, and he was the guy that really. Let's see if I got it right here. Kyle ended up running it, but Emmett is the guy who was the CEO, and he was the chief technical officer and hired all the programmers. He ran like 80% of the company. So he is himself an engineer and a hardcore gamer, and he's the one that kind of figured out Twitch.
So cool. Well, I'll see you next week. Hold on. We are now.